Mark Lackey doesn't usually appear on Wednesdays. He normally comes in on Tuesdays, but of course we had Luca Magnotta yesterday that we were talking about, so Mark has decided to come back, and we're glad you did.
Well, I'm glad you had me, Pat, and that's the issues in live TV. I've only been bumped about 3 times in the last 2 years, but those things happen.
Yeah, Rob Ford, I know, was one.
Rob was one, and also Mark Carney was another time. That,
so you're in good company.
So that's right.
Yeah.
And as an ex-central banker, it was fine to be bumped by Mark, and Rob was the mayor. So of course,
Luca Magnotta. But hey,
yeah, that's a whole other story.
Now you're doing something that we only do every once in a while.
Yeah, we do non-commodities about once every 8 weeks. And it's interesting, Pat, I had a money manager phone me yesterday and say, geez, you do non-commodities once every 8 weeks. So he's obviously watching the show very religiously.
Yeah.
Secondly, that's in line with the venture market and the small cap index on the TSX. About 12 to 15% of the companies are non-commodities. So we're trying to reflect that sector. And again, Pat, the other problem, of course, is we've lost a lot of coverage in those areas. So a lot of analysts have left or been taken out. So it's actually worse for the non-commodity area than the commodity area. When I did my analysis, there's been more analysts that have lost jobs or left as a result. And so, we're trying to fill that void here on the show. We do some valuation reports at CHF. I'm not saying we fill the void, Pat, but at least we're doing our thing to help small caps.
Small caps, with the market rallying the way it has. I talked about the 300% on the Dow Jones.
Right.
Even the TSX is 200% from the 09 lows.
That's right.
Has small cap done the same thing?
No. Pat, last week, the small cap index hit a 15-year low.
Wow.
I mean, that just shows you how disconnected the small cap sector is. It's back to commodities that were far lower. You're getting valuations on good small cap companies that are not reflective of anything in the mid cap or big areas. So, I mean, the obvious question is, when's this going to recover?
Yeah.
I think some of it's going to start to recover this year, because the one positive I can say, Pat, there's still a lot of small cap funds out there. They've got a lot of cash, admittedly, but they're looking to deploy it. And there's a lot of brokers and high net worth people I talk to who still like small caps. In fact, Pat, I'll tell you, the last 3 months, I've had more people talk to me about small cap companies than the previous 3 years. So I do see some turn, even if the index itself's not reflecting it, because, well, what's happened in the last 4 or 5 weeks has been this tax loss selling on small caps has been huge, because you pointed out, if you make your money in the big caps, what do people sell to take the tax losses in?
Yeah.
The small caps. So, yeah, we're back to 1997 levels, which I find remarkable. I certainly didn't expect that.
Okay, let's get to your 3 picks.
Right.
These ones are interesting, and I don't think we've talked about any of them
No,
before.
we haven't. No, they're quite a diverse group.
IOU Financial.
Yeah, I think that's a great name. Now, the company, Pat, was set up by Phil Marlowe, and of course the Marlowe family, well known in Quebec financial circles.
Right.
Phil himself, though, went and worked on Wall Street, and he got the idea that when he saw how difficult the regulators were becoming with the banks, which was true across the business, where a lot of banks, after all, were in good shape. They weren't in bad shape, but the regulators made it difficult for banks to loan to small companies. Well, Phil recognized in his colleagues that there's a lot of good small companies, Pat, that have high credit ratings.
Right.
And they may only need 100 or 200,000 to, say, close a deal, but a lot of times they need it in 2 or 3 or 4 days. You go to a bank, that's not going to happen. Okay, that's maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. So Phil sets up these algorithms, and he's grown his business dramatically, where people now, they apply. If they meet all the criteria, I point out he's not a lender of the last resort like some people are out there who, when the bank won't touch you and nobody else will touch you, they'll give you money. That's not the case here. He's going after high quality companies who, for various reasons, need the money quickly and don't feel that they can get from the bank quickly
but a short period of time, typically?
Well, in fact, Phil will give you an answer in 2 or 3 days. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking, how long are you taking the money?
A lot of times, many times it is a short loan, Pat. That's
like
a good point.
Bridge?
Yeah,
to
exactly.
A bigger financial?
Here's a good example. He may have an accounting firm with 10 people. They want to take over a 4-person operation. They're short 100 or 200,000. Now you may say, well, it's not a lot of money, but if you need the money quickly and you've exhausted all your other opportunities in terms of friends and family and people involved, this is the perfect place to go. And there has been a growing area. I mean, On Deck, which is now IPOing at $20, is a competitor of Phil's. They're in there and they do some of the very same things in the United States. I should point out Phil's subsidiary is in Atlanta, and he does his business largely in the United States because there's a lot more small companies and there's been this regulatory aspect that's given him a great opportunity. So he's going to be profitable in the next year. It's interesting when I look at valuations, Pat, Phil's valuation, if he was somewhat comparable to On Deck, given his revenues, he wouldn't be trading at 40 cents, he'd be probably 150 to $2. Now I realize he's smaller and has to get better better known, but there's great opportunity here.
Okay. Synapsis Therapeutics.
Yeah, now this is a very interesting company, Pat. This jumped up at the top of my list, and a few people phoned me yesterday and said, Mark, I've never seen you mention something in the therapeutic or pharmaceutical area before. Yeah. I said, well, I don't really have a lot that come onto my screen. But Pat, this has got a great management team. What they've done is they've had 2 takeovers in the last few years. And a lot of people can't get out of phase 1, and they've had 2 takeovers. And it's a neurological drug. It's related to Parkinson's disease. So they have a number of top neurological people on the board, part of the company. So I really like the structure of this company. And what I didn't realize, Pat, I knew people had Parkinson's, but I didn't recognize that some people have what are called OFF episodes. So this is a complication of Parkinson's when they're actually rigid, they can't speak, they can't move.
Oh.
When I talked to a doctor this week, he said, yeah, Mark, you would have no idea what this is like. Some people will have anywhere between 1 and 6 attacks a day, and they can last for up to 2 hours. So you could have some poor individual who's sitting there for a better part of the day that can't move, can't speak. I mean, it's not exactly a terrific way to live. But what they have come up with, Pat, is they've reformulated apomorphine, and they've come up with a film strip that you would put in your mouth, kind of like those Listerine strips. And the advantage of this is, the other alternative these days is take needles. Well, you got to have somebody that knows what they're doing when they're giving people needles every so often.
Right.
So this
but
is
if you're paralyzed, you can't put them in. You still have to have nursing care do it. Right.
So what are you going to do? Hire a nurse? Well, how many people can afford that? That's not going to be covered under most health insurance situations, particularly not in the United States, where there's over 1 million people that have Parkinson's. These OFF episodes hit about between 25 and 50% of all the people that have it. So they have come up with this product, Pat, and they've tested it. And on the first few people that they tested, they got motor skills back in 10 minutes. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. So, here they've just finishing phase 2. They'll go into phase 3 next year. People said to me, well, they could have NDA approval by the end of 2016. That's pretty good product. I think at this stage, it's certainly well worth owning and putting on your radar screen.
Yeah. And then Contagious Gaming. And you were talking about this just as we were in the break.
Well, that's right.
You were excited.
Well, because, Pat, if you go back, one of the reasons I came on to some of the non-commodities stories here was I had put 2 gaming companies out there last year that have done phenomenally well in Canada and mentioned it to some people on the street, and then people phoned me up and said, well, you should have put it on the network. Yeah. And I said, well, at that point we weren't doing non-commodities, and nevertheless those stocks have skyrocketed. Now I looked at my list, and Contagious jumped to the top. Now this stock's only even been trading for about 3-4 months. Oh. But they've got a great management team. They got financial guys. They got a gaming guy out of the UK that's outstanding. They just bought a bingo company, online bingo. That's going to be accretive. They have a deal with the U.S. lotteries, which are now going digital. So that's a great business in Georgia and Kentucky in particular, but it's going to happen all over. The one I find fascinating, and maybe because I'm an ex-athlete, and I point out ex-athlete, is that they have a deal with the Premiership. And I would say the best soccer league in the world, and one that has a
You get a lot of argument on that.
I'll get some. Wide variety. But I'll tell you right now, most people can name 5 teams out of England. How many can name 5 out of Spain or Germany? So I think that it's widely followed. And the amazing thing is, Pat, last week was their first game where you bet on the game when it's on. When it's actually taking place. It was Liverpool and Arsenal 2-2 tie. So this is great because among people under 40, they're all online gaming types, and they've got their tablets and their phone, and this is great for them because in every 5-minute interval they can make and place bets. And so I think this is a unique approach that Contagious has come up with. So I think they got a huge potential here to be very.
Sounds like it could
exciting.
be contagious.